Pick any ancient civilization, any one, Egypt, Greece, Rome, India, China, the Americas, doesn't matter which one you choose. Every single one of them worshipped animals, not metaphorically, not symbolically in a distant, abstract way. Actually worshipped them, built temples for them, carved their faces into stone, made their rulers wear their skins, killed humans in their name. In the exact same civilizations that worshipped certain animals with absolute devotion were terrified of others, not careful, not cautious, terrified. So what was actually happening? Why did ancient humans draw such clear lines between animals that deserved reverence and animals that deserved fear? The answer isn't religious, it isn't primitive thinking, it's something far more interesting than either of those explanations. Part 1. The first rule ancient humans learned. Before temples, before gods, before any organized religion existed anywhere on Earth, your ancient ancestors were watching animals. Constantly, not casually, with the kind of focused, life depends on this attention, that modern humans almost never have to apply to anything. Because the animal world was their entire information system. Which direction did the birds fly when a storm was coming? Which animals avoided certain plants, and therefore told you those plants were dangerous? Where did predators hunt, and therefore where should you never walk alone at night? Animals were the original encyclopedia, the original weather forecast, the original danger map, and early humans who read them correctly survived. The ones who didn't became a lesson for everyone else. Part 2. Why they feared certain animals. Let's start with fear, because it's the simpler of the two responses, and understanding it makes the worship make more sense. Ancient humans feared animals that did specific things. Not just animals that were large. Not just animals that were fast. Animals that did things which, in the ancient world, had no explanation. The snake was one of the most feared animals across virtually every ancient civilization on Earth. And the fear wasn't just about the bite. It was about everything else. A snake moves without legs. It appears from nowhere. It can be completely invisible a foot away from you. It sheds its entire skin, and emerges looking completely new. It can kill something 10 times its size with a single strike. And it does all of this, silently. Without warning. Without any of the signals other predators give before they attack. To an ancient human with no understanding of venom, no concept of how snake movement works, no explanation for how something can shed its skin and survive. The snake wasn't just dangerous. It was wrong. It violated rules that everything else in the natural world seemed to follow. And things that violated the rules were the most frightening things in the ancient world, because you couldn't predict them, and in a world where prediction meant survival, unpredictability was the most dangerous quality anything could have. Part 3. The Crocodile Problem. Here's something that illustrates ancient animal fear in a specific way. The crocodile. Ancient Egyptians lived along the Nile. The Nile was everything. It was water. It was food. It was transportation. It was the reason Egypt existed at all. And the Nile had crocodiles. Enormous. Patient. Invisible until the last possible second. A crocodile in the Nile didn't hunt the way other predators hunted. It didn't chase. It didn't roar. It didn't signal its approach. It waited, sometimes for hours, completely still, completely hidden, and then, in a fraction of a second, something that had been standing at the water's edge was gone. No warning, no chase, no chance. Ancient Egyptians couldn't explain this. They couldn't understand patience on that scale. They couldn't understand how something could be invisible in plain water. They couldn't understand the speed of that final strike. So their fear of crocodiles wasn't irrational. It was completely rational. They just expressed it, in the only framework they had available. Spiritual power. Something that could do what a crocodile could do. Must have power beyond the natural world. And here is where fear begins to transform into something more complex. Part 4. The moment fear became worship. This is the most fascinating transition in the entire story. And it happened in every ancient culture independently. The logic went something like this. If something has power you cannot explain, and you cannot defeat it, and you cannot avoid it, then your only option is to try to make it an ally. You cannot fight the crocodile. You cannot outswim it. You cannot predict it, but maybe, if you honor it, if you acknowledge its power, if you offer something to it, maybe it will leave you alone. This is the psychological root of worshipping feared animals. Not stupidity, not primitive thinking, survival strategy, the most logical response available to humans who had no other tools. And it worked. in the sense that it gave communities a way to manage collective fear. A ritual around the dangerous animal gave people something to do with terror that would otherwise be paralyzing. You can't fight a crocodile, but you can bring it an offering. And that action, that ritual, gave ancient humans something modern humans still desperately need: a sense of control in a situation where they had none. Part 5, the animals they worshipped without fear. But not all worshipped animals were feared. Some were worshipped for completely different reasons. The eagle is one of the most consistent examples across ancient cultures worldwide. Egypt, Rome, ancient Greece, the Aztecs, Native American tribes, ancient Persia, all of them, the eagle. Why? The eagle does something no ancient human could do. It sees from a distance no human eye can match. It moves between the earth and the sky, two worlds ancient humans saw as fundamentally separate. It strikes with a precision that looked, to ancient observers, almost impossible. And it survives, seemingly effortlessly, in conditions that would kill a human within days. The eagle represented something ancient humans desperately wanted: the ability to see further than their own eyes allowed, the ability to exist between worlds, the power to strike with perfect accuracy. They couldn't have these things themselves. But if the eagle was their symbol, their god, their protector, then perhaps some of that power extended to them. This is different from fear-based worship. This is aspiration expressed in the only language ancient humans had for things beyond their reach. Part 6, the bull. The bull appears in ancient worship across an extraordinary range of cultures. Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, ancient Greece, the Minoans, ancient Rome, independent civilizations, separated by thousands of miles and hundreds of years. All arrived at the bull as a sacred animal. Why? The bull was the most visible concentration of raw physical power in the ancient world. It was strength made visible, and in a world where physical strength was the most direct form of power available, the bull represented something ancient humans understood at the deepest possible level: force, dominance, the ability to impose your will on the physical world. Ancient rulers connected themselves to bulls deliberately, not because they believed they were bulls, because they wanted everyone around them to understand: I have that kind of power. The animal wasn't just a symbol. It was a language, a way of communicating something about power and dominance, that transcended every spoken language barrier of the ancient world. Part 7, the cat. Egypt and cats. Most people know ancient Egyptians valued cats highly. Fewer people understand why, and the real reason is more practical than most explanations suggest. Ancient Egypt stored grain, enormous quantities of it. The entire civilization depended on grain storage working correctly. And grain attracted rats, and rats carried disease. And disease in the ancient world didn't just make you sick. It could collapse an entire city's food supply, kill half a population in a single season, end a civilization. The cat was the solution to this problem. And it worked. Cats killed rats efficiently, consistently, and without requiring anything from humans in return. They protected the food supply. They protected the population. They protected the civilization. The reverence that developed around cats in ancient Egypt wasn't arbitrary spiritual belief disconnected from reality. It was gratitude expressed in the only framework available. That animal is protecting us. That animal deserves honor. And over generations, honor became reverence. Reverence became worship. Worship became law. Killing a cat in ancient Egypt was punishable by death, not because ancient Egyptians were irrational, because they understood, at a practical level, what happened to civilizations that lost control of their grain supply. Part 8, the animals that were both. Some animals occupied the most complex position of all, feared and worshipped simultaneously. The wolf is perhaps the best example. Ancient humans feared wolves. They hunted the same prey. They competed for the same resources. They were fast enough and strong enough and smart enough to be a genuine threat. And yet, ancient cultures across Europe, Asia, and the Americas all developed complex relationships with wolves that went beyond simple fear. Some Native American traditions saw the wolf as a teacher. Ancient Norse mythology made wolves central figures, both destructive and necessary. Roman mythology connected the founding of Rome itself to wolves. Why this complexity? Because the wolf did something that most feared animals didn't do. It operated in a way that ancient humans could recognize. It hunted in coordinated groups. It had clear social hierarchy. It communicated within its pack. It took care of its young. It was, in ways that ancient humans could see and understand, doing something that looked remarkably like what ancient humans themselves did. The wolf wasn't just a threat. It was a mirror, and that made it something neither pure fear nor pure aspiration could fully explain. Part 9. What this tells us about ancient humans. Here's what the entire pattern reveals. Ancient humans weren't primitive in the way that word usually implies. They weren't confused about reality. They were doing something extremely sophisticated. They were taking the most powerful, most dangerous, most impressive forces in their world, and building a system of meaning around them. That system told communities what to fear and why. It told rulers how to communicate power without words. It told ordinary people how to relate to forces they couldn't control. It created shared meaning across populations that had no other way to coordinate at scale. The animals they feared weren't random. The animals they worshipped weren't random. Every choice reflected something real. About what mattered for survival. About what represented power. About what the community needed to believe. To hold itself together through conditions that modern humans would find almost unimaginable. Part 10. Why it still matters today. Here's the modern connection. You still do versions of this. Sports. Teams take animal names specifically for the qualities those animals represent. Eagles, bears, lions, tigers, wolves. Companies use animal symbols to communicate something about their brand without words. Political parties use animals as symbols of their values. Movies make certain animals villains, snakes, wolves, sharks, and others heroes, dogs, horses, eagles, based on associations that go back thousands of years before any of those movies existed. The specific framework ancient humans used, temples, rituals, gods, looks different now, but the underlying human need that created it, the need to take something powerful and either make it sacred or make it a symbol, hasn't changed. You're still doing what your ancestors did around a fire 50,000 years ago. Deciding which forces in the world deserve fear, and which ones deserve something closer to reverence. Just with different animals, in different temples. Outro. Ancient humans didn't fear and worship animals randomly. They were doing something extraordinarily logical. With the tools and frameworks available to them, every feared animal represented something unpredictable, uncontrollable, or incomprehensible. Every worshipped animal represented something they needed, power they wanted to borrow, qualities they couldn't possess themselves, forces they needed to make allies of, because they couldn't afford to make enemies of them. The temples are mostly gone now. The rituals have changed, but the pattern, the deeply human pattern of deciding what in this world deserves fear, and what deserves something more, is still running, in you, right now. Subscribe for more, because there's a lot more about what ancient humans understood, that we've forgotten we still do. And it only gets stranger.